I was running down an empty street with my heart pounding. I did not know who was after me, but I knew I had to keep moving. My name is Sam, and I never expected my life to turn into a fight for survival. It all started with a simple case. I worked as a private investigator, and I was hired to look into a missing sum of money. I met my friend Joe at a small diner one afternoon. He said, "Sam, there is more to this case than you think. Watch your back." I did not pay much attention at first. I thought it was just another case. A few days later, while I was driving home from meeting a client, two men jumped in my car. They tried to force me into a dark van, but I managed to fight back. I broke free and ran. That night I found myself running down a dark street, not sure where to go. I ducked into an open door and hid in a small room. I took a moment to catch my breath and dialed Lisa. Lisa was a reporter who had been following a story about a crime ring led by a man named Dan. I told her, "Lisa, I'm in trouble. I have proof that Dan is behind the missing money. They are after me." She replied, "Meet me at the old train station. Hurry." I left the room and drove fast to the station. At the train station, I found Lisa waiting in a shadowed corner. "Sam, I have been tracking Dan for months," she said. "He runs a dangerous crime ring. I believe he is behind many crimes in this city." I nodded. "I have evidence that ties him to the missing money and other crimes," I said. "I need to deliver this evidence to the police." Before we could speak further, I heard a car engine roar in the distance. I looked up and saw a black car pull up near us. Two men got out with guns in their hands. "Sam, you should not have come here," one of them said. They started shooting. I shouted at Lisa, "Run," and sprinted away. I ran down a narrow side street, with the sound of footsteps and shouts chasing me. I turned into another alley and finally found a place to hide behind a stack of boxes in a small storage room. I held my breath until the sound of the car faded away. When I was sure they had left, I stepped out and called Joe on my phone. "Joe, I am being chased. I need a safe place to plan my next move." Joe answered quickly, "Meet me at the old warehouse on 7th Street. I know someone who can help." I agreed and drove as fast as I could to the warehouse. The warehouse was dark and empty. I waited in a corner until Joe arrived with a man named Tom. Tom was a tech expert who had helped us before. "Sam, I can get your evidence online and send it securely to the police," Tom said. I showed them a flash drive with the documents and pictures I had collected. Tom nodded. "I will upload this right away." Just as Tom began working, the door burst open. Dan's men had found us. I ducked behind a stack of wooden pallets. Joe shouted, "Sam, use the back exit." I ran to a side door and pushed it open, slipping out into the dark night. I could hear the shouts of the men behind me as I jumped into a waiting taxi parked on the curb. I told the driver, "Go, go, go," and we sped off into the night. For the next few hours, I drove through the city, trying to put as much distance between me and my pursuers as I could. I called Lisa again. "Lisa, Tom is uploading the evidence now. The police should get it soon," I said, trying to catch my breath. She replied, "Be careful, Sam. Dan will not stop until he gets you." I hung up and tried to think of my next move. I finally reached an old safe house that a friend had set up for me. I locked the door behind me and sat down. I looked at the flash drive on the table and thought about everything I had been through. I had run, I had fought, and I had suffered, but I was still here. I had a plan. I would expose Dan and his gang, no matter what. The next day, I received a call from Officer Mike from a small police unit known for taking on the city's criminals. "Sam, we got your evidence. Dan's operation is larger than we thought," he said in a flat tone. I asked, "What do you want from me?" Mike replied, "I need you to help us set a trap. You know Dan's style. You have to lure him into making a move." I hesitated but agreed. I had little choice. That night, I arranged a meeting with Mike and a few other officers. We planned a sting at a location where Dan was known to do business, a rundown building on the edge of the city. I went there alone to make sure I could draw Dan out. I walked into the building and waited. Every minute felt like an hour. After a short time, I heard footsteps. I saw a man with a dark suit enter the room. I recognized him as one of Dan's lieutenants. I tried to remain calm and used my phone to record our conversation from a distance. The man said, "Dan will be here soon. Make sure everything is ready." I hid and waited. A few minutes later, Dan entered the room. He looked at me with cold eyes and said, "Sam, I have been expecting you." I did not reply. He continued, "You thought you could expose me, but you were wrong. You are just a pawn in my game." His voice was steady and I could feel the danger. Before I could react, I saw one of the officers slip into the room through a back door. Mike's voice came through a hidden earpiece. "Sam, now!" I lunged forward and tackled Dan. We struggled on the floor. Dan punched me hard and I felt pain shoot through my face. I used every bit of my strength and intelligence to break free. I managed to push him aside and ran toward a door. I could hear the sounds of the struggle behind me. I ran into a small corridor and found a stairway. I climbed the stairs, feeling every step in my aching legs. I burst out onto a narrow street, and the chase began again. Dan's men were behind me, and I had to keep moving. I ducked into a quiet side street and flagged down a passing cab. "Take me anywhere but here," I shouted. The driver nodded, and we sped off. In the cab, I took a moment to check my phone. There was a message from Lisa. "I have more files that can tie Dan to everything. Be careful." I replied, "I will. I just want to stay alive and expose him." I knew I could not run forever. I needed to use my mind to outsmart them. I arranged to meet with an old contact, Mark, who had once been a criminal but had turned his life around. Mark ran a small security company and knew the ins and outs of the city. I met him at a small diner on the outskirts. Over coffee, I told him everything. Mark listened and said, "Sam, I know a safe route out of this mess. I can help you disappear for a while and plan your next move." I agreed. I had nothing left to lose. With Mark's help, I went off the grid. I changed my phone number, moved to a safe location, and continued to work on my plan. I spent long nights checking the evidence and preparing a statement for the press. I knew that when the evidence went public, Dan's operation would crumble. Weeks passed, and I remained hidden. I kept in touch with Lisa and Tom through secure messages. One evening, as I was going through more files, I received a call from Joe. His voice was low and urgent. "Sam, you need to listen. There is a final twist. Mike was not with the police. He was working for Dan all along." I felt a chill. I asked, "What do you mean?" Joe said, "Mike fed Dan the plan. He wanted Dan to know that you were getting too close. I tried to warn you, but it was too late." I felt betrayed. I had trusted Mike, and now I realized he was part of the enemy. I gathered all my evidence and contacted Lisa. "Lisa, we have a bigger problem. Mike was on Dan's side," I said. She replied, "I have a secure line. I am sending the evidence to an independent journalist. We must expose the truth." At that moment, I knew I had to make a final move. I arranged a meeting with the independent journalist at a public place, a busy street corner at dusk. I planned to hand over all the evidence and tell my story. I arrived early and sat on a bench, checking my watch. I felt the weight of everything I had been through. I had suffered, I had been betrayed, and I had run many times. But I was still standing. The journalist, a woman named Sarah, arrived. "Sam, I have your messages," she said in a calm voice. "I am ready to take your story to the public." I handed her the flash drive and the extra files. "This is the truth about Dan and his gang," I said. "I risked my life to get this, and I want the world to know." Before Sarah could reply, I saw a black car pull up. I felt my heart jump. I knew they had found me. I looked at Sarah and said, "Run, get the evidence to safety." I then stepped away from the bench and started running down the street. I could hear shouting and car doors opening. I ran into a crowd of people on the busy street and blended in. I took a left and found a small alley. I kept running until I was sure I had lost my pursuers. I then found a payphone, called Mark, and told him to arrange an extraction. Within minutes, Mark arrived in a small van. I climbed in, and we drove away from the scene. I sat in silence as the van sped through the dark streets. I thought about everything I had been through: betrayal by friends, a deadly chase, and the constant fear of being caught. I had used my mind to get out of many traps, but the pain of loss and betrayal stayed with me. A few hours later, I received a call from Sarah. "Sam, the evidence is safe, and the story is out. Dan's operation is under investigation. The police have arrested several of his men." I let out a deep sigh. "Thank you, Sarah. I hope this ends the nightmare." I did not feel complete relief. I had lost too much, and I knew that the dark world I had faced would never truly leave me. I had used every bit of my intelligence and strength to survive. I had fought against a ruthless enemy and paid a high price, but I had exposed the truth, and that was what mattered. Now, I sit in a safe house, thinking about my next steps. I know that in this city, danger lurks around every corner, and the game is far from over. I have learned to trust no one, and I know that more twists and turns await me. For now, I keep my head low and my eyes open, ready for whatever comes next. I am Sam, and this is my real story, a crime thriller of betrayal, danger, and a never-ending fight for the truth.